Well, very good evening to everybody. It's been a little bit of a while since we've had a conversation from lockdown, but we return, and the show brought to you by Mumpro SA in association with I4 Williams Trailers. Please do go and check them out. Obviously, we've eased off the gas so far as the interviews are concerned as we get back to a bit more of a normal routine, although we continue in a little lockdown. And that, given the numbers of the COVID cases that are rising, seems that will be the place where we will remain for the foreseeable future. So this evening, we're talking to a man who we've been trying to get this interview together for a bit of a while, but we finally have managed. And my guest this evening is Johan Lotter. Johan, how are you?
Good, thanks, Aidan, and you?
Well, a little bit chilly, but we forge on. Tell me, were you at the event over the weekend? We're not calling them shows. They're not shows. I'm not even sure if we're allowed to call them events. I'm not sure. Did you go to the Notter show on the weekend?
No, I did not. I didn't get around to it. You're talking about the young horse one?
That one.
Yeah, no, I didn't get around to that. No, we had a busy weekend with our little restaurant, which obviously after last night's announcement, I'm glad we had, because it's going to be very quiet from now on.
Wait a minute. Your little restaurant? Tell me about your little restaurant, something I don't know.
We run a little restaurant out of the clubhouse at Stain City, little pizzeria, and just a nice get-together place. And yeah, it's been obviously after the lockdown or the restrictions were lessened, so to say. It picked up, but now it'll be quiet again.
Back to the drawing board. I think it's going to be the case for the foreseeable future, and on, off, depending on how it goes out there. These interviews, we get to know you, but before we go back into your back history, tell us about the business that you operate. Apart from the restaurant, you mentioned Stain City, the setup there, and how you are tied in with that.
Well, Aidan, I've been involved with the guys from word go, from when they broke ground literally before the building was done. And I was involved with the design and the general feeling of the barn. We have 36 stables, 2 tack rooms, 2 wash bays, walker, nice big arena, and then obviously a beautiful clubhouse to go with it. Nice outriding space. We've had the odd show, but it wasn't really designed as a show venue. Although I think in time to come, we'll make that we'll change it a bit and make it hopefully more shows.
Well, this year was to be the year. I saw on the calendar a few Stain City events. What did you have planned for this year?
Well, we had a very good final last year with the Young Horse Series, where we actually we had live streaming. Mike Domain did some live streaming for us, and it was a big success. It was a beautiful day, lots of sponsors. It ran like clockwork, and we were hoping to host 2 legs of the Young Horse, including the final, and then we've had a few shows lined up, but obviously COVID-19 had different ideas. Yeah.
Now, last year, Johan, towards the end of last year, there were some rumblings in the rumor mill that perhaps Stain City was going to host a final leg of the World Cup series. It didn't come to fruition, but is that in the planning? Is that where you'd like to go? And if so, what's holding you guys back?
Aidan, yes. We actually put in a bid again for the final at the end of this year. But again, I can't give you any concrete answers on that now. We were hoping to have another arena built, a second arena. We got a very big arena, 95 by 60 meters, and we were hoping to have another warm-up built. Stabling is always going to be an issue, to house all those visiting horses. And we were working on something like that. Had an investor to put up some stables. The temporary ones, but everything is on ice now. Hey, everything's on ice.
Now, Stain City as a livery yard, how does it work? Do you have to be a resident within Stain City to have a horse there, or can you live outside of the premises and still have a livery horse with you?
At this point in time, you can live outside the estate and have a horse there. But as demand within the estate grows, which it will in time to come, then obviously residents of the estate will have, you know, the right to have a stable first before someone from the outside.
And at this current time, 35 boxes, are you full? Are you chock-a-block, or have you got some open space?
I've lost a few horses, a couple of older horses and a couple of smaller horses, and one or two clients that actually immigrated. So at the moment, I would say I'm probably about 75–80% full. The rest are, the balance of the horses are my horses, mine and Johan and Jenna's horses. So yeah, can't complain too much at this point.
Are you open to taking in more clients? Anybody who happens to be watching this this podcast or interview, whatever you want to call it, might say, "Oh, that sounds appealing. Can they give you a ring?"
Yes, for sure, for sure.
Good stuff. It's an excellent, wonderful facility. Johan, let's get to know you a little bit more. You've been in the game a long time now. How did it all start for you? When? How? Were you Joburg born and raised?
No, I actually come from Pretoria. I grew up in an area called Clubview East, and there was a little stable yard around the corner called Clubview Stables, exactly 1 kilometer from my parents' house. It was run by Bruce and Teresa McLaughlin, and we used to drive past there. And we drove past there one day. I think I was just about 7 years old, and I said to my mom, I want to go and ride a horse or ride a pony. And my mom took me, and yeah, that's how it started.
And what was the setup? Typical riding school, starting with up-down stuff?
Yes, but they also, Bruce was very much into eventing, and successful in eventing, and he had some junior riders who were also very successful in eventing, and there were also some show jumping riders. I'm talking now, one of them that comes straight away to mind is Lynn Piercy. Now, what was Lynn's maiden? Cobain. Oh, that was a maiden surname. Lynn and Tracy come from that yard. There were lots of very good riders produced out of that yard by Bruce and T, and then also Anne Ward. Later in those years, David Wilkin was also at that stable yard. So yeah, quite a bit of history in that little yard.
And Johan, tell me, did the bug bite straight away when you started? Was that what you, in terms of your sporting life, what you wanted to do, or were there other sports at primary school and high school? Because you seem like quite a sporty guy.
Yeah, I played sports. I did quite a bit of marathon running. I was never fast in the 100 or the 200, but I was very good actually at the long distances. Played some cricket, some rugby, some tennis, did a little bit of karate, a little bit of everything, But the horses was always number one. I don't know, just always went back to the horses. Always.
And how did it develop from those early riding school days to becoming a professional? Take us through your story, because you must have then acquired your own ponies, graduated from riding school ponies. Did your folks then go, well, we need to invest, and you had your own property where you had your horses, or did they back you right the way, or did you always have your horses in yards and ride out of yards?
No, always had the horses in yards and ride out of yards. Obviously, after the riding school ponies, my first pony was called Miss Porcelain. Beautiful, beautiful black pony with 4 white socks. I can see her now in front of my mind's eye. And then the upgrade from her was Bubbling Fun, and then followed Always Happy, which was a very good pony for Stacey van der Merwe later. And then followed a pony called Wade Magic Wand. And yeah, then that stable yard kind of came to an end. Bruce and T got separated. Teresa went to the Midlands. Bruce went out of the horses, and the stable yard carried on for a few years, but it had to close up. And then we all moved to Sandown stables, which was next to the old Northland stables.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us, we had a riding, like a mommy's club, the mommies all had a driving club. So one week it was mommy A, mommy B, mommy C, and all the kids from the old stable got carried on to Sandown. And what happened after Sandown? We went to Burren Junction again. We all went with Ann Ward, was our trainer, our instructor then, and then moved to Burren Junction, and then eventually we ended up at Northlands. Mm-hmm. Back to the property next to the old Sandown riding school. Okay.
And at what stage were you then? Was it your junior career or young adult when you landed up at Northlands? I mean, what was the timeline?
Yeah, the pony career was basically at Clubview Stables, and a little bit at Sandown Stables. Sandown Stables, that's where I met a mate of mine, George Philippides. I'm sure you know him.
Too well, I'm afraid.
Oh, sorry, Georgie boy. So that was basically the children's career. Burren Junction, Northlands was a junior career. We started traveling, doing away shows. In those days, we did Shongweni. We often went to Welkom. Remember those Welkom shows? We had beautiful shows in Welkom. And that's kind of where I started getting a little bit of success. I had a horse called Big Stinger, was my first junior horse, and started getting a few prizes in the 1 meter 20 classes and built up to that. And then I ended up in the juniors with my most successful horse was a horse called Palladium, which was actually organized for me by Rogan Askin. The girl's parents immigrated to Germany and they left the horse, and I got the ride, and it ended up being a fantastic horse. I made the Transvaal team in the juniors, and yeah, it was super.
Your children's career, was it a competitive career? You named quite a few ponies in there and a few weighed-in ponies, and they were a good lot. So were you a top child rider, a really competitive rider? Because it astounds me, some top riders that we speak to, like the likes of Ray, Nicole, they never even had a children or hardly a junior career. They really only cut their teeth when they went into adults. Your story, a little bit different?
Yes, I had a very good pony career. I think I was third in Pony SA Champs, was my best result. I made, again, in those days, the Transvaal team, I think 2 or 3 years in a row for show jumping. In those days, we also did a bit of showing and a bit of equitation. You did a bit of everything. When you went to SA Champs, you did equitation, showing, jumping. So, yes, there was good success in the ponies. Never really won a big title, but I was always there in the top 5, there and thereabout, Yeah.
Getting back to Palladium, thoroughbred, do you remember his pedigree? And tell me about him and what made him so good.
Aiden, Rogan will curse, but I don't remember his pedigree. He was imported from New Zealand, though. I remember clear as daylight, he had the branding on his shoulder. I can still see it now. Very, very good horse. Hot chestnut gelding, little bit high with the head carriage, little bit slow in the front legs, a little bit, it needed a little bit of space into the front pole. But super horse for me. Brave as a lion, did everything. The 1 year there was a Sanef competition, and we had 3 teams. And there was a girl, a Greek girl who rode at Carlswood Stables, and she was in the B team, and they had car problems on the way to the show. She didn't make the show, and then I got the chance to ride, and we jumped a clear round. I think we jumped 1 of 2 clear rounds. I think Bronwyn Redmond on Tall Story. She had a beautiful big grey horse called Tall Story. I think she was the only other clear. So that's a nice memory. Palladium, good horse.
Your coaches through those years, you've mentioned you landed up at Northlands. Did Rogan coach you a little bit, or perhaps Greg coach you a little bit? And in your children's years, who was the coaching there? Mostly Ann Ward?
Mostly Ann Ward in the children and junior days. Later on in the junior days, Anne was very busy at Carlswood Stables because Lynn and Pat were running a very successful stable yard at Carlswood. And we would, in those days, we still rode across that road. Can you believe it? Can you imagine riding your horse across that road today? And then there wasn't always time to go over to Carlswood. And yeah, Rogan and Greg definitely helped me a hell of a lot. Rogan, not so much in those days. Greg did quite a bit of work with us then. And in the later days, when I was working in the hotel, in later days, I had more lessons from Rogan.
Your schooling, tell us about your schooling. Did you stick in the Pretoria area for your schooling? And once you left juniors and left school, what was the story then? Was there tertiary education? Did you travel?
I went to university after school, but I was a bit too naughty to stay there. It was a 6-month stint, and then I decided, well, it wasn't working. I had to go, and my dad said, go and get a job. And that's how I got into the hotel trade. And then the riding took a bit of a backseat. I was for about 7 or 8 years, I was in the hotel trade and long hours, and I ended up going to hotel school. And yeah, that spent a lot of time trying to, build something up in that. The horses went a little bit on the back burner. I had a horse called Eastern Moon and a horse called Wise Guy that I rode in those days, and went to the odd adult show, but not that much at all. Those were quiet.
So what happened in the hotel trade then, Johan, that you decided, well, that actually isn't what you want to do with your life, and came back to horses and decided that you wanted to be a professional horseman? Or was it something that was perhaps going to fill a gap for a while that then became your profession? Was it a conscious decision?
Yes, it was, but there was a backup plan because I ended up very well. I worked with Protea Hotels, and when I qualified, they offered me a very, very good junior management position. In those days, a very good package. And I had a couple options. I could go and work in any hotel in South Africa, basically. But then in the back of my head, I still had this thing that I wanted to try and make it with horses. And I had some discussions and meetings with Barry Taylor, and he told me about his friend David, who was looking for someone. So I opted to take a chance and try horses. Because I had all the qualifications. I met many people in the trade, and I could go back basically any time. I could walk into any Protea hotel through my contacts that I had, and I think I would have had a job. So it was the right time to take a chance to try the horses full time. I went to England after I qualified. That was 98, 99. And I worked for 2 years in England for David. And after that, came back to South Africa, worked for Barry for 9 months, and then I started my own thing.
I seem to remember, why do I have a memory of you riding a grey horse for Ed Simpson? Was there a stint with Ed somewhere in there as well?
Very much so. I actually, I rented a little room. When I worked in the hotel, I had a room on Ed's property. And in lieu of for rent, I would ride horses for him. And he had a beautiful grey horse. I can't even remember the horse's name. But he had a few horses that he bred himself. And I rode for a while for Ed. Ed, and then old Alan Jaffe used to come there. He used to help me with dressage lessons on Ed's horses. I've been very fortunate to work with lots of horsemen. If I think back, there was Bruce and T. McLaughlin, then it was Anne Ward, Rogan and Greg, then Theo LaRosse. I met Theo LaRosse through Rogan, and after Theo LaRosse, I actually worked for David Piercy also. When I left university, before I went into the hotel trade, I worked for David Piercy for a year. And I've kind of learned a little bit from everyone, took something from each man. There's quite a few phrases that I remember from each man clearly until this day.
Yeah. And were there different systems that you learned? I mean, they're all horsemen, but there's many ways to skin a cat, although I hate that saying. But you know what I mean? You learn different aspects of horsemanship and different ways of doing things from the different people you worked for. How many different tools did you get in your tool bag, and how helpful would that have been over the years going out on your own?
Oh, yeah, you know, many things. I think the people I were involved with, in general, if I can say, they all swam in the same direction in this river. Some were a little bit this way, some were a little bit that way, but everybody was kind of in between the basic parameters. And I think the one thing that I've learned that stuck with me the most is to keep it simple, keep it simple. But I'll cite you an example for the thing I remember about Theo, or just, one or two things that I remember is he used to say, try and work your pressure out of 10. So how much squeeze do I need to give the horse on takeoff, So you need to find out for yourself, how much did I do between, 1 and 10. The other thing, for instance, that typically makes me think of Theo, or what Theo taught me, is that out of extension comes collection. So before you can collect, you must be able to extend. David Piercy always used to hammer on me and said, Johan, as long as you're right on the last 3 strides. David, I learned many things from David, but the one thing he used to say to me, he said, riding is cerebral, you have to think, don't just, and so forth. I mean, I've been very lucky, I think. I think I've taken something from every man that I've worked with, and over the years molded my own little way. Yeah.
Very interesting what you say, because when you talk about Theo, basically is what he was saying is develop a feel, learn how much feel you need for the horse. And then when you talk about David, he's more of a thinking, being on top of what's going on kind of guy. And, somewhere in the middle, you might find yourself.
David, I met David in a time where he was very much competing in international shows. And the horse had to be managed very well. England was funny weather. If a horse went out to the show and it was summertime or it was raining or whatever not, and the horse came back in dirty feet or whatever not, if you didn't clean it and keep your hand on it, in 3 or 4 days the horse had mud fever. Once you got mud fever, then it's in a then it takes how long to get away from it, and then the horse is lame. And so David was very much prepare and be prepared for where you're going, and management of the horse. Theo taught me flat work. Theo taught me to ride a horse on the flat and to get a horse between hand and leg, and to do all those things that almost sound a little bit like boring, but they're not. If you understand them, they're not boring.
No, it's the fundamentals.
Absolutely.
The foundations. Tell me, growing up, were you a kid like me who followed the sport very closely and had their heroes and looked up to those riders of those days and watched them in the warm-up ring and recorded and burnt out your VHS player on certain riders when you taped them going around on Super Sport? And if so, who are some of the guys that you looked up to?
My best rider always was Annelie Bogefini. I remember standing at the warm-up arena watching her ride the horses, and then because in those days it was Audi was a sponsor. And that was, I was always at the warm-up arena and then follow her to go and watch her jump in the main. Annelie was my rider. But yes, very much. Good stuff.
Sick for the game.
Yeah.
So Johan, moving into adults, you decided to make a go of it yourself. You spent a little bit of time with Barry, and then you decided, right, I'm going to make a go of this. What does that mean? Because for somebody to be a professional horseman, They need to make a wage. So that means probably teaching or dealing horses. One needs to operate off of a property. So you'd need to get a property. And then, of course, it always comes down to finding the right horses that gel with you to make a name as a rider, because that will attract clientele. So where did you find your support? Tell us through that whole story from the time you decided to go alone.
Aidan, Barry had a little stable yard that he had some breeding horses on down the road from his old property. And he was stopping that. So he put me in touch with the owner of that property. And that was kind of my break. I could rent it for very, very small amount of money. And that's how I started. I had a horse that I had in partnership with Barry and David. And I was riding a horse.
Was that your sender?
No. I'll tell you about Jacinda. But Jacinda was belonged to the Kane Berman family, but Barry organized there for me to take her over, and she came with me to my first yard. But I had this little horse with Barry and David, and then Jacinda came, and then I also had a horse called Forest Marshall. It belonged to Georgina Rowan Ratcliffe now, Lynn's daughter. And like I mentioned to you earlier, there was a story that when I rode Outward Bound, I rode a horse called Outward Bound for Lynn, and that also started a relationship that's been going now for over 30 years. So in any case, I moved from Barry to this little stable yard. I had one paying horse, which was Jacinda, and then the horse that I had with Barry and David that they helped me to keep. And then the rest was starting lessons and doing two-berth transport in my Buckingham two-berth, ride in the morning, and then go and look for work and go and teach. And it just grew. Slowly, it grew. Having Jacinda and having Forest Marshall, I think from a riding point, put me on the map. Jacinda was the best 1.30 meter horse in South Africa, I think, for 2 or 3 years running. And that I think that's where I cut my teeth, is to use the expression that you used earlier. And those 130 classes, that's where I learned to ride, I think.
Was it tough going in the beginning, finding the support, or was there like a natural progression where things just fell into place? Because it's always daunting thinking, sure, will I get the support? Will I be able to do this? How am I going to pay my bills every month? The horses need to eat. The grooms need to be paid. You know, there's a lot that goes into it, and you're probably looking up at your wife. They're going, yeah, I remember it was quite tough.
She was one of my first clients, Johan. And I bought a horse for 5,000 rand off the track, just a silly story, and I sold half share to Johan for 5,000 rand. So that's we have a chuckle about that until this day. But Aidan, I was lucky. Johan straight away had 2 or 3 horses with me. Robin Gerber had a couple of horses with me. Like I said, I had the support of the Kane Berman family. I had the support of Lynn Rowand. Till this day, I mean, even in those days, guys like Dion Boardman, Sean Allnut, Barry Steenkamp, Barry Taylor, Rogan Gregg, you know, really a lot of help. You know, the guys were, hey, Johan, what do you need? Here's some polo bandages. Here's some numbness. Here's some old bridles. So I was very lucky, and yeah, it was. I won't look back and say it was easy, but it was an adventure, absolute adventure. Yeah.
Was the property that you moved to already established with all the amenities you needed, the stables, the arenas, or was it a case of, well, I'll sell this horse, make a little bit of money, invest in another one, use some of the money I made from that one to put in a small arena, and so you went, and so you built, and so you grew?
Yeah, there were stables on the property, but not an arena. So another man who did a lot for me in my life, Jim James, he also had horses with Barry. Jim, they ran an earth moving company. So I backed a couple of horses. He had 2 or 3 horses that I backed and rode for him. And in lieu of that, he sent his big machinery down to the little stable yard, and I got permission from the owner, and he graded me an arena. And for, I think, the first 5 years, no, maybe not 5 years, for the first 2 years, we rode on shavings and manure, you know, the old way when the stuff comes out the stables, chuck it out on the, so we were slipping and sliding, but we learned how to hold the horse in balance. And actually the very first bank loan I took was for 30,000 Rand, and that was to take all of that manure and stuff off the existing arena and to put river sand in the arena. So yeah, it was good going. It was fun. Then we sold the horse. Johan and I sold the horse. The very first horse I sold for good money was a mare called Ramona B. It was bought by Anja Muller. And when we sold that horse, I bought a truck. It was the late Alan Meyer. Alan had passed away, and he had a truck that he had imported, a mechanical horse. And Tracy wanted to sell it, obviously, after, you know. And so I managed to get that truck, and then we got a trailer. So that the horse is basically, you know, paid for everything. That first, and I've got that truck until this day. That truck is still going. That we bought with the very first horse that we sold.
Just going back to one of your supporters, Jim James, he was the pilot, the aerobatic pilot that had horses with Barry. I'm sure did he not do aerobatic?
No.
Am I thinking of the wrong guy?
No, not Jim. No. Not that I know of. Could be maybe when he was younger. I met him at a lot later stage in his life, but not that I know of that Jim was a pilot. No.
All right. Some of the horses, Johan, that you've had in your adult career that have been your superstars, that you have got a really soft spot in your heart and in your memories?
Well, obviously, I think Forest Marshall. I jumped my first derby on Forest Marshall. I jumped my first World Cup on Forest Marshall. Yasenda she was amazing. I don't think I've ever won as much on any horse ever than like that. You just knew when you went into a jump off. I knew if I did what I had to do, she was going to jump a clear route and be fast at the same time. What'd you say?
Just talking about Yasenda, she was a top 130 horse. Did you ever try the bigger stuff with her, or was it out of her limits? Was that her range?
That was where she was at her best. I did jump 1 or 2 1-meter-40 classes, but again, Yasenda never had the best front action. She jumped a little bit higher to get over, and over the 140 jump, she really worked too hard. And I actually, again, what I learned from another saying that I learned from Barry, not every post is a winning post. So that horse, you can't take her to that. Keep her where she's comfortable. And once I brought her back down, there was no turning back. And I learned that, rather keep her there and go and win some money.
Do you think that
Yasenda is still alive, eh? She's retired here at our house now. She walks around the garden here every day.
Did you breed with her ever, Johan? Did she have progeny?
We tried, but nothing came of it.
Yeah. Very, very interesting that you say that. And of course, in terms of keeping your horse where they're comfortable, where they're happy, where they're at their best, a lot of people battle to learn that lesson with aspirations of grandeur. It takes a good horseman to go, well, this is the horse in its place, and I must be satisfied with that. What does that come down to, do you think, that people sometimes think a little bit too much of what they're on?
I don't know, maybe you just haven't bumped your head enough. I made that mistake a couple of times. You know, I had a very good horse called Krumar van der Heffink that I had with Lynn. He was a little bit hot and a little bit crazy, but he was a super duper horse. And I mean, one of my fondest memories, I think one of the best classes to my mind that I ever won was a 1-meter-40 championship class at Maple Ridge on him. And I had to beat Laura Neal on that big chestnut. What was that chestnut horse that she had? No,
Sausage. What was it called?
Yeah.
Opium?
Yeah.
Opium?
Yes, exactly. That one. She was lightning fast, and I was last to go. Krumar won the class, and then I think a year or so later, I tried him in a World Cup at KEP, and the horse just never came back after that. He jumped clear around up until, I think it was either jump number 6 or jump number 8, was a vertical oxer double coming out of a very tight turn. And he came up the turn and he just said, I'm not doing it. And I never had the horse back after that. So that's for me very sad. And that was, again, a very dear lesson for me. So, yeah. I think
you're saying you wrecked the horse, the horse's confidence went in that one class and he never regained it.
He was never the same. He was never the same. I should have kept him in the 1 meter 40 classes. He was such a careful jumper. That's my feeling. Someone else might think different, but that's what I think. So yeah, you make mistakes, huh? You make mistakes. You learn from the mistakes.
Right.
Yeah.
World Games. You had a foray to the World Games. Tell us about your journey, how that came about, the qualifying, the journey, the horse that you were sitting on, the whole experience.
Right. That's also goes back a few years back now to Lynn Rowand. Well, like I mentioned to you earlier, I rode a horse called Outward Bound that Lynn gave me to ride. Then I rode Forest Marshal for Georgina. And then when it was time for Forest Marshal to retire, we were at a show in Cape Town, 2003, if my memory serves correct. We retired Forest Marshal at the age of 17. And then Lynn said to me, would I like to go to Europe and go and find a horse? So I said, well, obviously that would be a dream come true. So she sent me off to Europe. I went to David and we traveled around Europe and we found a very, very nice horse in Holland that was jumping in the 1 meter 40 classes, a chestnut gelding named Opportunity. So it fitted. In any case, Opportunity came over and unfortunately he died in the quarantine station in Johannesburg. Excuse me. Oh, Jenna, the battery is low here. I told you the battery's going to run out. There's now only 10% left. You see, now they're gone. Oh, no, he's still here. Are you still there?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Plug yourself in. Let's. Yeah.
Opportunity died in the quarantine station. So it was Snot and Trana. We were all very sad, etc. But had that not happened, I wouldn't have gone back. Lynn sent me back, and I found a horse called Rendement, which means the return on your investment, no? Or what you put in is what you get out, and that's what Rendement was. He was my return on investment. We got him as a 6-year-old, 1 meter 10 horse. He came to South Africa. I had some beautiful, beautiful fun days with him. Worked him all the way up to the World Cup classes. He jumped his first World Cup at the Old Royal Show. And at that show, Lynn and I sat down with the late Jimmy Dewar, and we had a discussion with Jimmy regarding the procedures and the chances of going to the World Championship, to the World Games. In any case, Jimmy pointed us in the right direction, and the following year, Rendement went into quarantine. That was 2007, and at the beginning of 2007, flew over to Belgium, and I followed, and there we started. I spent 3 years there in Belgium and Holland with Rendement. First, I based with Michel Hayward, well-known Belgian vet, well-known to lots of riders in the fraternity. Michel organized me a place with a man called Eric van der Vleuten, who is a top international himself. His son is now one of the top riders in the world at this point in time. Mm-hmm. And I trained and based and trained with Eric and Michael and traveled to all the shows with them. And we qualified in 2010, beginning of 2010 in Linz in Austria. We qualified to go to the 2010 World Games in Kentucky. And that was obviously, again, a dream come true. I always said if I can get to the World Games, I'll be content. We went to the games, and I didn't start so good. It was always a bit difficult. Rendement was a very big horse, and it was always a bit of a battle to keep him sound or to do enough jump. It was a fine balance to keep him sound and do enough jumping to stay, to stay prepared. I obviously didn't have other horses to ride. So when the other guys were going to a show every weekend with another horse out of his string, I had to pick and choose the show. So I had a bit of a shaky start, but by the last...
What was the soundness issue, Johan?
He had a small tendon injury before he went to Europe, and we managed that came right beautifully. And then I jumped at a show in Europe, and it was a rainy day, and we were jumping on grass, and it happened again. There was again a small injury, and that kind of set us back another 6 months. So we had to take the pressure off, let the horse heal, and it was always it's always in the back of your mind, I remember going to a show before the games. Tony Lewis organized for us SA guys to meet up with Jerry Mullins from Ireland, and Jerry helped me at the one show. And I remember saying to Jerry, have you got, he said, try this, try that, don't start too slow, that all the little bits and pieces. And I said, have you any other advice for me when the day was over? And he said to me, yes, you better just keep him sound. So that was always the issue with that horse. I think because he brought an injury, from South Africa. But the games happened. It was a shaky start, but by day 3, I jumped a clear round. To me, it's a clear round. I had a time penalty in the end. But it was awesome. It was beautiful. For me, I said to Lynn that day, I said, Lynn, now you have to believe in fairy tales or in miracles, because I said you just saw one.
Wonderful story. What happened to Rendement subsequently? Did you come straight home? Did you campaign a little bit more after the games?
Rendement had again then picked up a small injury after the games, so he had to go into rest. Then I went back, and we actually had a very, very serious buy. We drove the horse all the way from Holland to Italy to go and show him to this guy. And then that deal just never happened. And then Lynn said, let's bring him home. And it's a bit of a sad story. He came home, and in the quarantine station, he developed colic, and the horse never had colic. All the years we had him, never had colic. And we ended up sending him to Onderstepoort, and they opened him up. It was a very quick op. The gut hadn't twisted, but there was an infection in the gut. How I don't know the ins and outs. The vets know all these stories. But basically, they sewed him back up, and again, the horse was just never the same because of being so big and all of that weight at the bottom of the belly. It never healed properly. The skin was there, but the muscle never knitted. These jumping days were over. He came home, and he lived at home here. And then we were at a show in Shongweni, and Henning always loved the horse. Henning actually, many, many years ago, before we went to Europe, one show in Cape Town, Henning actually sat myself and Lynn down, and he wanted to buy the horse, and he said that I could retain the ride on him. But Lynn said, no, we're going to the World Championship. But then here was Henning's opportunity, and he had a discussion with us, and he ended up buying the horse. And Rendement now lives at Capital Stud. And I'm very excited to see what he's going to breed. I think Henning has given him the best possible mares. Knowing Henning, it's perfection in his breeding. And I think it's fantastic because that horse is an absolute lionheart. Jumping, you couldn't build a jump that he couldn't jump. He was as straight as an arrow, as brave as a lion. And I think he's going to pass it on to his progeny. So I'm looking forward to that.
Have you had a chance to sit on any of the progeny? Where are they at now? What's the quality like? Must be great quality.
Yeah, not from horses that Henning has bred. We bred a few horses before Henning bought him, and Steve Atkinson and I actually bought a very nice mare that Roger bred years ago. A young mare that's Rendement Acclaim. And we have her now, training her up, and lovely horse, beautiful temperament. Not the easiest horse to ride, a little bit long in the body, maybe same as Rendement. He was also not the easiest one to ride, to collect. I think those big horses take a little bit longer to come strong physically. But I think for me, the biggest thing that I've seen with all the horses, all his progeny that I've worked with or sat on or ridden, is temperament. Just super, super temperament. Yeah.
Getting back to your time, your 3 years overseas, were you commuting? Did you leave your operation here? Were you back and forth?
Yes. Johan kept the pot on the go. She kept the stables going. The first stint was 6 months away, and then after that it was every 3 months. So go for 3 months, come back for 2 weeks or so, go for 3 months. So that was very hard. Jenna was still very small, so lost a lot out there with her as a little kid. But in the end, it paid off for us, you know. It paid dividends. Yeah, it was difficult, but if you look back, it was worth it. It was worth it.
And of course, the Van der Vleutens are huge names. They're not just big names. They're superstar riders, and in big teams and with the Global Champions Tour. They were the winners of the super finals 2 years ago in 2018. Wonderful outfit. Tell me about them and training with them and philosophies and ideologies and what they put into it. Is it much the same here? Are they just sitting on better horses? You know, can you compare South Africa or some of the glaring differences between Europe and training with them and here?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I learned, you know, I'm a first generation horseman, and I think most of us in South Africa are first generation horsemen. Maybe, you know, people like Barry's dad was a horseman, you know, and his parents, they were all in horses. So but the majority of us are first generation horsemen. And with those guys, it's just, I mean, Eric was a third generation horseman. Michael's a fourth generation horseman. And what the biggest thing that stands out for me is, again, simplicity. You know, for sure, I think the horses were better quality than the old thoroughbreds that we grew up on, you know, but that's now a thing of the past in any case. But just the fact that every day a little bit. Don't try, and if it doesn't come right today, you try again tomorrow. And if it doesn't tomorrow, you try again the next day. And if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, eventually the penny drops and it comes together. So, yeah. I was also very lucky. It was not just Eric and Michael. There was also Piet Rijmakers. He helped me. Also, when Eric was riding, we went together to the same World Games. So Eric, who was always helping me at shows, now had to concentrate on his own riding. So he couldn't be helping me. Well, thank goodness our Piet stepped in and helped me very, very much. One thing that Piet taught me, Johan, your horse's ears must always be the highest point of his body. When you're going into those big jumps, you've got to have his ears up, you know. So nice memories. Yeah, good guys, but just normal, no fancy stuff, you know. It was do easy things.
Did you tell Piet it's easier said? It's easy to say that when you're sitting on the likes of Ratina Z, who's got her ears prick galloping to a fence and classic touch, you know. So you came back, Johan. Were you still as hungry coming back, or once you ticked that very big box of World Games, do you start to settle down a little bit, or are you still as hungry for success as you ever were?
I'm not too sure. When I came back, I was a little bit disillusioned. I mean, I ended on the absolute high of my life, and then I got an aeroplane and flew back to South Africa, and I didn't have a horse that was jumping higher than a meter. So I went from the absolute high to come back down to the low things. I think that my business had taken quite a bit of a knock for the time being away. A lot of the guys moved up, and I think I kind of stagnated from a business point of view. So I wanted to get that up and running again. I think I'm now more hungry than I was then. I think you come back a little bit, and it's emotional stuff, and you know, what for, why, you know, you've gone through all of this. But to come back where I am now, and I think it also depends a little bit on the horses, where you are and what horses you have. You know, I think I've got 3 or 4 very, very nice horses now. 2 of them coming close now to the 1 meter 30, 35 classes. Hopefully in a year or so they'll be in the 140 classes, and then we're ready to start aiming for a 150 class. I mean, obviously that's where I'd like to be back at. But yeah, no, there was definitely an area, a time where everything kind of went a bit low and below the plateau. But I think I'm slowly.
Well, was that perhaps a little bit unexpected, given that you go overseas, you ride the World Games, the equestrian community knows about it, you come back, and one would expect that the progression is that people want to pick you up as a rider and throw good horses at you because they know you can do the job, they know you're solid, they know you're cool under pressure. Here's a guy that we can invest in. Is that what happened? Or if not, was it a little bit disappointing that something that didn't happen?
I think maybe it was a little bit disappointing that didn't happen. I think one maybe gets to a point where you think, shucks, I'm doing my job. Maybe the Oaks are seeing it, and, you know. But in the same breath, I must say, you know, I've always had Lynn as my backup and as my sponsor, and she's always provided me with horses. I found a couple of horses and Lynn was there to buy them for me. Maybe I didn't choose the right horses to start with. But again, you learn from your mistakes. But yeah, I think if I were to be, or if I were in Holland or Germany, having walked out of a World Equestrian Games with those results and go back to Holland or Germany or Belgium, from what I've seen in the time I was there, the guys were offered horses, you know, that they were paid to ride horses. If they produced the goods, they got horses to ride. Huh? So yeah, I think in a way, I did feel a little bit, you feel a little bit
kind of that you've paid your dues. That, you know, how long do you have to keep going on the roundabout? Ever, while you were there, was it ever in the back of your mind that perhaps Europe would be a place to stay if you wanted to be a top tier rider? That is where you need to be.
When I was younger, when I worked in England, I actually tried to get a residency and whatever not, and that never materialized. But after Europe, you know, the fact that Jenna and Johanna at home, that basically signed and sealed that there was no way for me to think to go there. And I mean, I had my life here. I had to make something here. I had to make it work here. And Europe's tough, eh? You know, people see the glitz and the glamour. They see those guys riding in the big shows and the beautiful horses and trucks and whatever not, but you don't see all the slog that goes behind the scenes.
And you don't see the 10,000 other riders who are just as good who don't make it, because that's how competitive it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Having done the whole European campaign and got to the World Games and the route that you took, perhaps there's some pearls of wisdom that you can impart with people who are yet to do it, looking to do it, that have that in their crosshairs as something that they want to tick off their bucket list. What are the checks and balances that you need to have in place to mount a successful campaign?
You need horsepower, you need the right horse, and you need the right people around you. You need people who are driven and passionate, and you need money behind you. So yes, you need to be able to do the work, and it's the donkey work, I think, that makes a difference. It's that every day, like I said earlier, that little bit every day, and you get the result that you want in 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months. But for sure, I think our riders are just as good, and if not better, than a lot of the riders I've seen in Europe. Some of those guys start riding when they're older, but there's just so many shows, so many horses that they ride. They go to a show Wednesday to Sunday, week in, week out. And if you jumping here, if we go to a show, if I'm preparing and going to a show, and at the end of the show I've seen 1,000 jumps, then he's seen 5,000 jumps, you know. And for me, it's all about how many jumps you jump to get that see that distance, to find that rhythm. So yeah, our riders can do it. You have to dream. I'm a dreamer. If you want it, you must dream it. And I don't know who said it, but there's an old saying: if your dream doesn't scare you, then it's not big enough. Huh?
Absolutely. Looking at the local scene, having tasted international, a step out internationally as well, anything that you think in terms of the local scene could be improved on, changes that you might like to see happen, competitions that you might like to see reinstated, or competitions that you're not so fond of, things that can just push the limits a little bit more, get us that little bit better, that, we need to constantly be looking to better ourselves. How can we do that?
Aidan, I'm not too sure. I think we I don't know.
Are we fast enough?
It's all about money. I think if what I've seen, or from that side, the guys take chances because there's money to be won. So also, if there's more money to be won, then I think the guys are going to take a few more chances, and you're going to make it exciting. I think maybe what we can do, also maybe different jumping classes, and instead of having a class where people who don't really know about riding or jumping, it's like watching paint dry. But if you have like more fun classes or speed classes that you get the public involved in, or that's more exciting for the public to watch, those kind of things. I mean, if I just think back to, a great favorite is the 6-bar event at the Shangweni, at the Nissan Shangweni show. I mean, how many people you've seen that? How the people come out for stuff like that. So I think maybe not just the traditional classes, some different classes, and maybe some different venues. Our venues are far away from people. There also it's different. They pull into a city and they build the showground on the plain in the middle of the village or something. Yeah, people have to come to the show jumping. There, show jumping gets taken to the people.
Big difference.
Big
difference.
Yeah.
What's left on your bucket list? Are you a derby man? Is that one that you'd really like to win, or is it? Are you a purist? Are you a World Cup? Where's your heart lie?
No, I've been dreaming about winning the derby, I think, since I started horse riding. I remember the days of the old Ananda Club, sitting by the dike and watching, again, Gonda and Tony and Annalie and Errol and all those guys, The derby has, I don't know, it's just got a certain magic to it. I don't think there's a rider who doesn't want to win the derby. I think the closest I came, I was 5th on Forest Marshall in the derby one year. But yes, I would very much love to. But then again, it also depends again on the horse. Have you got a horse that's tough enough to do a derby course? And if you have a horse that's going to be a really, really good Grand Prix horse, is it worth it risking him in a derby class? There's only one derby a year. So again, like I said earlier, I've made many mistakes. So maybe I'm a little bit more cautious now. But for sure, derby, absolutely, I'd love to win it if I have the right horse. But then again, I've never won a major title in South Africa. I've been very, very successful, but I've never ever won a major title. I've won, Yasenda won obviously a micro derby, I think 2 years in a row. And I've won many classes, but I've never won a World Cup or a SA Champs or a Transvaal Champs or something like that. So I would like to win a title at least once.
Yeah. Which title, if you had to choose, and of course you don't, because you're talented and hungry, and that it will come. It just comes down to horsepower, and you're building a powerful string now. But if I were to say, right, Johan, I'll give you one of those. Would it be a World Cup? Would it be a Derby? Would it be an SA Champs or an outdoor Grand Prix? Which one would you go for?
I think a Derby.
And if I were to say to you, right, you can have the Derby or you can have a World Cup series, which would you go for?
Well, I think the World Cup series, because if you win the series, you got a shot at going over there and riding in a final.
Would you do it again?
If the opportunity arose, yes. If everything fell into place, and if it was right, holistically, the whole picture, if I could leave my business without coming back to no business, if I, all those small things, yes, for sure. If I had the chance,
all the stars have got to align.
Absolutely. Then for sure, let's go on all burners, all cylinders.
Getting back to your day-to-day life, take us through a day in the life of Johan Lotter. What do you get up to? How many horses to ride? What sort of work you're doing? Is there coaching involved? What's it all about?
8 in the mornings are basically for me to ride. So I have a little program. On a Tuesday, they do easy things. On a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they'll do a bit of flat work and maybe a bit of jumping a grid or some single jumps, depending on what I've got lined up for the weekend. So I try and get my riding done in the morning. I used to ride quite a few horses, but I had quite a back injury last year. It actually put me out of commission from May last year until I think I only rode again in October. So I try and limit the amount of horses I ride.
Was that from a fall, or is that just the years of wear and tear?
Just years of wear and tear. And like Lynn Rowan very smartly pointed out to me, she said that, Johan, remember, you've got a sell-by date, so look after your back, don't just ride. So
I should have said, I'm like one of your wines. I'm like one of your wines. I'm only going to get better with age.
With age. But yeah, the day starts with riding my horses. I try and get my riding done by 12 o'clock. And then the teaching starts 2:30, 3 o'clock. And I've got a bunch of girls who ride with me. I used to travel a hell of a lot. Before I had Steyn City, I didn't have really a big stable yard. So I used to travel and teach. I used to go to Cape Town. I used to go to Petersburg. I used to go to Natal. I've been to Kenya, Swaziland, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe. In any case, those things have kind of fallen away because I've got enough business here. Steyn City's keeping me busy enough. So I spend the afternoons teaching, and we finish around about 5:30. And then obviously
your teaching, is it just for your Steyn City clients, or are people allowed to truck in and come and have lessons with you from outside?
No, I do have a few girls who drive in and come and have lessons, who truck in and come have lessons with me. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Now, Johan, the future. Tell us about the string of horses that you are building. Where you at the moment, and where you aiming for?
Okay, I've got a horse called Pour Moi, who is a Belgium-bred chestnut stallion, approved in Belgium. And I went with Lynn, and we got him in, obviously in Belgium. The horse's name is actually not Pour Moi. The horse's name is Non de Jour, but I didn't like the name because the description. If you listen, if you go and work out what the name says, it's not such a cool name in my opinion. And there's again a little story behind that. We were having dinner the evening when the deal was to be clenched, and when the man brought the bill, we were having a discussion. What's the horse's name going to be? And when the man brought the bill, Lynn said, Pour Moi. In other words, for me, the bill must come to her. And I said to her, well, that's going to be his name. So that's Pour Moi. 7-year-old, jumping now currently in the 1m20 class. Maybe not the most classical jumper. Strong horse. Brave, honest. I think the horse is going to do things for me. So I'd like to get him into the 1m30 class as soon as possible, and I really think there's more jump than what they can give me. He can jump big jumps. And I've got he's bred. Asking about the breeding, he's very well bred, this horse, Aiden. He is his father is a stallion called I'm Murube Star, and I'm Murube Star is a son of Nabab. Am I right? Nabab. So he is Nabab. I'll think of it. I'll get it right. I mustn't even talk about the breeding. Rogan and I always have an argument when we get to that. Then I have a horse called Forever de la Rock. He's jumping now currently the 1m30 class. Beautiful horse. I think it's also a horse that will go and jump at least the World Cup classes in South Africa. He's a bit older. And then I've got a young mare called Kite Runner, who I think is going to be a very good horse. Maybe not a horse for me in the end. I think she's going to be a girl's horse in the end, but in the meantime, I'm producing her. Maybe she'll be a nice horse for Kelly O'Connor, I think.
But you better get in quick. I think Kelly's set her sights overseas on an overseas target as well. Johan, question that I ask a lot of people. You briefly touched on it before. The question of the thoroughbred versus the warm blood. One pure athleticism, other brings power as well. There's been an evolution of the warm blood breed as well, so they are changing. But you made your name on thoroughbreds. You've had great success on thoroughbreds. Where do you stand on the subject? Is there still a place for the thoroughbred in South Africa in the jumping ranks?
For the purebred thoroughbred, I don't know. I mean, you maybe that's a little bit. I remember in the old days we used to get big thoroughbreds, and I think with modern racing they're breeding them smaller and smaller. So I don't know. That's not really. I wouldn't think so. I like a horse that I can sit on. I like to sit and ride. I like a calmer horse. I don't mind riding a hot horse, but it's nice to have a calm horse. I think you can never discard it. I think it's always going to be there, and it's got to be there in the bloodline and the breeding. To give that athleticism and that ability, that the blood. But yeah, I must say I prefer riding the bigger horses, the stronger horses, the warm blood side.
And then final question before I let you go. 2020 has been a very strange year. How's it been for you guys in terms of lockdowns at Stain City and cracking on, and where we're at now with things slowly starting to open up a little bit? Are you optimistic for the rest of the year that we might get some big shows, some sponsored shows coming back in, or are we writing 2020 off and never wanting to revisit her again?
Yeah. I think we need to ride the wave. I'm not getting too excited. That's my personal opinion. I want to get up and get my job done for the day. And if something comes along, I'll grab an opportunity. But I think the way to go is just to kind of ride this one out. The harder you're kicking, the less you're getting there. So. That's my feeling. My feeling is to just flow a little bit and see what comes up. Yeah.
Been wonderful chatting. Thank you for your time, and hopefully, listen, we'll have to ride the storm as you say, but hopefully we'll see you at some not shows in the near future.
Aidan, thank you very much for the opportunity, and good evening to you.
Take it easy, bud.